This is a Parshat podcast brought to you by Matan Women's Institute for Torah Study, and I'm your host, Yosefa Fogel-Rubel. Let's learn. Hi listeners, did you know that each episode since this year's Parshat Bereshit is filmed in a studio and available on YouTube? Check us out and get to know another side of the podcast over on YouTube. We still have Bamidbar episodes available for sponsorship. Be in touch with us at podcast@matan.org.il or with the Matan office to sponsor one. It's a great way to mark any occasion and to help this listening community grow. Also, make sure to check out the Matan Summer Program, which is going to be focusing on two sides of the story, multiple ways to interpret different kinds of Jewish texts. If you come and learn with us this summer, I'll also get to meet you there. There's a wonderful schedule of classes, of tiulim, so you could check out the Matan website for more details. Parshat Shelach opens with a divine commandment to send spies to the land of Israel. Famously, when this event is recapped in the first chapter of Dvarim, it's presented as the people's initiative. Either way, the reconnaissance mission doesn't go well for the people, and their negative reporting costs them 40 years of wandering in the desert, and the generation of the Exodus is punished to die there. Stricken by guilt, a group tries to reach Israel, but is quickly overcome by enemies and killed. This was simply too much too late. After this, the parasha concludes with a somewhat random grouping of laws, the commonality being that they all will be fulfilled when the people enter the land. Chazal and other commentators point out that this is likely meant as a comfort to the people. They will not be able to enter the land of Israel, but their children will, and they will fulfill these laws. Among them are the wine offerings and others that accompany the sacrifices, the challah piece given to the kohen, sacrifices given for wrongdoing by the community, the case of the wood gatherer, from which it is learned that there exists a more severe punishment of stoning for purposeful desecration of Shabbat, and finally the mitzvah to wear tzitzit. All these passages have been explored for their connection to the reconnaissance story that precedes them, whether connected linguistically, as in the word latul used by the tzitzit and the spy story, or the details provided about collective sin offerings, perhaps in dialogue with the collective sin recounted at the parasha's beginning. Today I am joined by Rabbanit Rachelle Sprecher Fraenkel, who is the director of Matan's Hilkhata Advanced Halacha program. She's a Yoetzet Halacha and teacher of Talmud and Halacha at Nishmat, and is also co-founder of the Jerusalem Unity Prize and Unity Day. Welcome, Rabbanit Rachelle.
Shalom, it's a pleasure.
I think you were here 3.5 years ago. I remember we spoke about Parshat somewhere in Sefer Shmot. That was
There wasn't a studio yet.
It wasn't a studio. It was an audio in the room upstairs in Matan. So it's a real pleasure and honor to have you back. And I really wanted you to come because this series is exploring ideas of leadership in the book of Bamidbar. And there's always a different prism that we could take to look at these stories. There were some years where we focused on sort of the concept of chaos to order, where we spoke about sort of the growing up or the teenage years of Am Yisrael. And this year, I really want to put a spotlight on the leaders, or in theory, who potentially should be leaders in the book of Bamidbar. And I wanted you to come on because I think that you have some experience in this realm.
Don't we all?
Don't we all? Some of us maybe slightly more than others. And I wanted to think with you about the spy story. So I'm going to bring us into it. Is that okay?
Sure.
I'm going to bring us into the story. There's something about the whole spy story that feels like a big fat setup.
What do you mean when you say setup?
Well, the story opens, וידבר השם למשה לאמור, שלח לך אנשים ויתורו את ארץ כנען. It's presented, as I said in the introduction, as a commandment from Hashem. Moshe shows us a different side of this story and tells us that it's actually the people asked for it. And either way, if I look at the presentation in the book of Bamidbar, so we have Hashem sending these people who are some sort of leaders in Am Yisrael. They're not exactly the Nesi'im who just brought the Korbanot in the previous parashot, but they're some sort of leaders. They obviously have some sort of prominence. They're probably good speakers. They have some sort of authority and charisma. And they're sent to the land of Israel with a list of questions. Now, this list of questions, they're not even just yes or no questions, okay? They have questions that are quite detailed. You have to go, Re'item et haaretz mahi, which is a general query. Go check out this place. What is it? Ve'ta'am hayoshev alea. And the people who live there, are they strong or are they weak? Are they many or are they few? Uma haaretz asher hu yoshev ba, hatova hi im ra'a, right? Is it a good or bad? And if we just jump to the next part of the story, they come back and do that. They come back and give their report. In that report, there is judgment. There may be also personal opinions of the Meraglim, but it kind of seems like they were asked to give their opinion. And
You're saying if it was a bad idea, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have ruled it out. I mean, he's either actually sending them or agreeing to the idea. If something was supposed to go wrong, it could have been prevented.
Yeah, and then the question is, well, was it initially going to be a failed procedure, right? Was it originally a terrible idea? And some of the Parshanim go in that direction and say it was a bad idea from the beginning. It doesn't even matter what they responded. But I'm still stuck on what the questions were.
It's very interesting because you might think that we were given these promises of Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, and we're going to this wonderful, wonderful place. And why should anybody? Maybe you have to find out where the soldiers are and how to attack, all kinds of that. But why would you even doubt that it's the best country But that's actually in the mission definition, So go check into Vayora.
And if it was a ruse, and Moshe's plan was, I'm going to give you an objective list of questions, but wink, wink, right? Only say nice things. Then if that was said, it's not reported in the Psukim, and we don't know. And then the spies clearly do not come back and do that. Meaning, and it throws me back, Rabbanit Rachelle, to earlier stories, our big, big stories of sin, right? We have three iconic ones. We have Chet Adam Rishon, with the first sin, which is, it's very clearly also meant to be a paradigm of what sin looks like. Meaning you have choices, you have all the things you could choose from, but there's that one thing you can't have, and it's going to look very, very tempting and attractive, and somehow somebody is going to find a way to fall into that space. And it does feel...
And humanity in some way is formed through that sin.
Yes.
So in other words, you're not even sure that the results are not intended or negative.
Exactly. They're framed as a curse, but the way it's presented is a paradigm of how humanity learns from life, and that there's something that's always going to be tempting. There's something that's always we're going to be flirting with the idea of doing what we shouldn't. And yeah, it has consequences. And in a reading, which I agree was a unique reading, but that I sat here this year with the unbelievable Professor Leon Kass, and we spoke about his reading of the golden calf story, and basically came to the same conclusion. I now can't unsee that reading. The idea that they were given the materials in their hands, a group of people who hadn't yet really adopted a monotheistic perspective. You can't make that kind of leap in 2 weeks. And so everything was in their hands. The fact that they made a chet egel, that they made this golden calf, is not surprising. Maybe it's what happened afterward, but it was, I would say, the setup makes it sound more theologically problematic, but meaning it was inevitable for the people to go in that direction.
It's like Chazal saying about you put this young boy in front of the market and you give them the money.
Yeah, you can't not.
From an educational point of view, maybe it should have been at least thought about.
Yeah, and this one feels wholly like a setup. Because here, the questions are put in their hands. And so when I then see when they come back, and I say, the 10 who come back with those negative reports, I get them. They're coming back and reporting generally about what they saw. Okay, they physically bring the fruits, right? And they say that they were there. Vayashivu otam davar v'et kol ha'eda vayiru'um et pri ha'aretz. They come back to speak. They show them all the fruits. And they tell them everything, right? They say, Banu el ha'aretz asher shelachtanu v'gam zavat chalav udvashu v'zeh pirya. And they say, it is zavat chalav udvash, and here are its fruits. Aval efes ki az ha'am yoshev ba'aretz. But this doesn't mean anything because we have all these enemies there, and we have these massive humans. There clearly was like a real genealogical difference between them. There were very, very large humans who were living there. We know that from other stories in Tanakh. And that's simply a truth. Kalev and Yoshua are the exception to the rule. And that becomes, I think, a question. What makes them the exception? But I'm curious what you think about that. Meaning, we have these 10. They seem to be doing what seems most natural. They're sent a list of questions. They come back and report. And what is it that makes them go in that direction? Or maybe more interestingly, what do you think is in Kalev and Yoshua that makes them go in a different direction?
So first, it's clear that the questions are good questions. Even when you say it's a setup, it almost sounds like maybe they were intended to stay in the desert for 40 years. Maybe these are processes that have to happen, and so it does make you wonder. The questions you put out are very compelling. The other side of it is. And we are used to thinking of this as a sin, as a chet, both as a religious judgment. You're sinning, also the missing the point, achta'a, and a historical way of we get set off the target and then so much happens. From the beginning of Bamidbar, when you look at the Parashat, you understand that actually, at least Parshat Bamidbar could have ended after 10 chapters. There is an original program. There's one counting that's supposed to happen, and one covenant that we already had, and a northern route that could have been taken, and everything would have been, a few days, and we're in Eretz Israel. And then there's how we interact with the divine plan, and it doesn't always work out the way the original divine plan is, and we have all of Sefer Bamidbar that's full of us being human, but being problematic humans, complaining, seeing the bad side of things, not appreciating, having very short-term memory, all of that. And in general, it gives me this feeling that reality is kind of a joint venture of what might have been the divine plan and how we play along with it. And Sefer Bamidbar turns out to be something all different, and we need another mifkad and another covenant, and everything has to be redone in the last 2 years, and in the middle we have this vast stay in the desert that's because of what goes on in our parasha. So it's one of these cases where you keep, and we have it with Moshe Rabbeinu a few times, you keep on digging with so what was the sin? Yeah, but there is an assumption that something went wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, often what's pointed out here is not the facts, but the tvustanut, the defeatism. Yeah, is that the way to pronounce it?
Defeatism, yeah.
Defeatism. And that's going, let's say, above and beyond the call of duty. You were sent to give us the information, and maybe if there's more relevant information, you do have to go over to Moshe and give him everything you have and your worries and your concerns, and maybe it would be irresponsible not to. But what is happening is a very public event with very strong statements that are definitely destroying the spirit of the people.
Right.
And it's like even there's their Rashi that's based on the Midrash Haggadah, when they say ki chazaku mimenu, it's as if they're pointing upwards and saying chazaku from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And being in that place after everything they're gone through is, it doesn't live up to any standard. Not only standard of leadership, just standard of hakarat tov, and they're claiming to be connected to reality. There's a different reality they've been living through for a very long time, and saying. If they're really saying ki chazaku mimenu, it's not totally pshat. It's just, where have you been for the last,
Well, by the way, I think it is pshat. Maybe not of those words, but of what the intent is. Because what they're basically saying is, you've promised us we're going to go there. You've promised us this is a good place. But the reality on the ground doesn't look that way. And so while I understand the rationality of their fear, it is a reflection of a lack of belief that Hashem will actually enable them. So I think it is pshat of the story.
For sure.
And there's something that in this moment about Kalev and Yoshua that feels naive in balance or in imbalance with the other meraglim, but their perspective is one of emunah, right? When they say, no, ma pitom, vayihas kalev et ha'am el Moshe, vayomer alo na'ale, vayarashnu ota ki yachol nuchala, right? He says, no, ma pitom, and it's also a very interesting phrase, vayihas kalev et ha'am el Moshe. There's, again, I agree with you also, there's a very strong statement here about what belongs in the public sphere and what belongs in the private sphere. Meaning, it very well could be that they come back, they are answering the questions that they were asked, they're doing what they're supposed to, but yeah, maybe for the people, they were supposed to put on a show. Maybe they were supposed to put on a show. Kalev and Yoshua know that. And so when it says that their relationship here, it specifies that et ha'am el Moshe, meaning there's things that were supposed to be maybe brought back to Moshe and things are supposed to be brought back to the Am. So, and that's where the 10 get it wrong, meaning they didn't do anything wrong, but it's let's say like even now, I think you probably would agree with me that there's a massive confusion in life now, forget leaders, between what belongs in public spaces and private spaces, where we haven't figured it out yet with all of these.
The whole notion of privacy is reshaping itself.
Exactly. And so we're figuring it out. And there's a lot of people making mistakes. And I'm like, in 30 years, when you look back at that, I wonder if you're going to care that was put in that space. But maybe that really is the issue. It's not the questions themselves or the answers, but it's where they chose to say what.
Yes, and I'm not even sure that what they're expected to do is put up a show. Mm-hmm. This is true and this is true. They said wonderful things about the country and they're also truth. I mean, they came and they agreed. They granted it is the kind of place, but it's as if they're almost carried away by these moments of public leadership and they have the limelight and their 15 minutes of glory and they're going to share everything because all these concerns they have to be said publicly. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. It might be. I mean, the fact that they're concerned, great, but maybe even a personal gain they take from leading this opposition. It's not simple. And there again, the question is, what's within this defeatism? Knowing that Hashem has been on your side, and eventually, when we have another set of meraglim by Yoshua. We hear that actually, again, this is 40 years later, but they've heard all about the miracles that have been happening, and these are 40-year-old miracles. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is something that's been running in families. Okay, because the news has reached Eretz Israel. So if they're proper meraglim, they heard that too. Mm-hmm. They were walking around. They might have. Of course, they're disguised and they can't say we're representative of these people. But there's a lot there that could have been collected over time. And they're choosing a very specific point of view. Again, the question is, what are they afraid of? Because just the fact that people are huge and the war will be fierce and that's a reason for planning it well or for whatever it needs, doron, tefillah, milchama, the way Jews prepare themselves for war. But basically saying abort the mission, okay, under these circumstances is unacceptable and unforgivable. Mm-hmm.
Well, you're saying they also don't provide a next step. They create havoc. They destroy the morale of the people, the future plan, so to speak. But they don't actually say, okay, well then what should we do? Meaning, so what? Then their plan is we're going to stay in the desert. Meaning, there's also this public-private dynamic, and there's also the point of what is the point of having shared that. And I think that that's a very important question that leaders today don't always ask themselves, meaning, what is the point of saying that? Is it going to do anything? Is it going to go anywhere? Is it just simply to make my name greater or to make somebody else's name smaller? What is the purpose of that? Like, what is the purpose of putting that speech out there? Like you're saying, there was a lack of shikul dat. There was a lack of of, I would say, forward or long-term thinking in what their report was, meaning it's kind of concrete. Here's your questions, here's your answers. And I first presented it and said, well, that makes sense. But in the long run, there's something about it that's simply unwise. Like, you've provided us with nothing except bring us back to the same complaint of let's go back to Egypt, because there's really nothing to be gained here.
It's one of these famous places where Rav Zak says, talks about the difference between optimism and hope. Mm-hmm. He says the Meraglim were bringing this voice of defeatism, mm-hmm. which never should have been there. The challenges should have been presented, and even publicly. But there's a difference between, when he says, oh, you thought that maybe they're supposed to put up a show of Yeh Beseder, everything's going to be okay, it comes with the Israeli passport. Yeh Beseder, and that's usually irresponsible and,
naive. It's naive also.
It's naive. It's definitely, people have to know that they're going to be faced with challenges. I'm thinking of Churchill, okay? What is it? Blood, tears, toil, this is going to be very, very difficult, but we're going to make it. Mm-hmm. Here's a leader that, and I think in that way, it's what Rav Zak presents as hope. The difference between saying, oh, things are going to be okay, and saying, look, this is going to be very challenging, and there are a lot of difficulties ahead of us, but together we can make it okay. Together we have the power, we have the support, we have HaKadosh Baruch Hu with us. It's really going to be, it's not going to be simple at all, but we can do it, okay? And that's classic leadership. Mm-hmm. Not just sugaring up some kind of fake presentation, but recruiting the people in a way that they can be part of this hope. And the sense of maybe what kind of, one of the descriptions there is, and we were in our eyes like grasshoppers, and so they looked at us, okay? So you read the pasuk and it's very clear to you that there's like a projection there. The minute you see yourself as a grasshopper, that's what somebody else that's looking at you mm-hmm. sees. Mm-hmm. But this has, a double problem here. First of all, if you're a leader, and this is where you're at this point. So whether you want it or not, grow into the position. This imposter syndrome and thinking I'm not enough and whatever, great, but that's not what we consider anava. Okay, you're in this position, grow into it. You can't consider yourself a grasshopper. In katon be'enecha, it's like Hashem speaking to Shaul. You think you're the tiniest one, but you're the king here. Live up to the position. That's one side of it, and the other is what they're creating in the people. You're giving the people the message that we're all grasshoppers, where you're really supposed to raise them to the moment. Mm-hmm. If you're a leader, you're supposed to raise people that feel competent, that feel worthy, that feel this, again, the definition of hope. Together we can get through this and we can reach all the Eretz Tova and, all the wonderful things that we actually also saw there. So not only do they see themselves as too small for the job, what they're creating in the eyes of the people is this grasshopper view of themselves. Mm-hmm. And of course their enemies are going to see them as grasshoppers, Yeah.
And it also doesn't take very much to bring the people back to that perspective because they already are not feeling confident.
But a nation of slaves, they
exactly. They don't have that. They don't have that self-identity yet. Your explanation is making me think about the following: that when it says "Vayihas kalev et ha'am," that he quiets everybody, and he says "Alo na'aleh v'yarashnu ota ki yachol nuchala," we're going to go up and we will be able to inherit it because we are capable, right? So you have both what you said of the nuchal, like in the rabim, in the we, right? He says we are capable of doing this, and it could be that really we should read that statement not as this is what they should have said instead of saying the truth, but we should have said that while saying that's all the truth, but we are capable of doing this, right? Meaning there needs to be a wedding between the report of the 10 tribes with I originally said naivete, but with the hopeful attitude of Kalev and Yoshua also, meaning that we are all capable of doing this together.
And it's not sure that they actually contradict what
Correct.
right. So
Nachon.
it could be that their report is laid on top of the report. Yes, you're right. This is all true, but we can do it, which makes them a more holistic position.
Yeah.
Another point here is when you think, whatever, it's easy to speak about leaders, and we all, but if there's something we're striving for. And it's difficult and rare, is this form of anava, of humility, that is definitely not self-cancellation. It knows what your role is. It knows what your point in history even is. Yeah. Okay, and sometimes you're put in places where, like we often say, it's biblical. What you're there, like Yoshua, like whoever we're gonna think, but the content of that anava, I can think of, there's a lot, but I can think of two things. One is, because you're truly, you have humility, you're not afraid. You're not afraid because it's not about you. And if you have an idea, or a plan, or you not only saw the difficulties, you also have some kind of original idea of how it might be tackled, and you put it out there. If they're going to laugh at me, let them laugh. I'm not the issue here. Okay? I remember the last interview of Rabbanit Steinsaltz, talking about this occasion where he was like 21 or 22 years old, and he was supposed to teach Torah to these 70-year-old professors that could have been his grandparent. And at some point he said, did they come to hear me? He says, kadachat, nobody wants to hear me. They want to hear a voice of Torah from Sinai. So that eventually makes, me 3,000-year-old, and there are these babies that are 70 years old. So really, when it really isn't about you, it's about something bigger than you, and you're just giving you're trying, you're doing your best. So that's I think very much like a staple of leadership here. It's not about you, and hence you're not afraid. And somehow I get the sense it's not exactly what the psukim say about the Meraglim, but that they were too self-concerned, or something about the experience of coming back and having everybody listen to them. They were confused in that sense. It's too much, all eyes on me, and less all eyes on the target.
Yeah. I think also this goes back to this point where it very well could be that even if everybody gathered, because it was natural when your people come back and you're just an encampment, and you could say, we're first going to meet with Moshe privately, and then we'll speak to you afterward. But like even that moment of thinking, of stopping for a moment, right? Because it says literally, I mean, again, the way it's reported here, we can only be based on what it says. But they come back, and וישובו מתור הארץ מקץ 40 יום. They come back after 40 days, וילכו ויבואו אל משה ואל אהרון, ואל כל עדת בני ישראל, אל מדבר פרן קדשה. I mean, they come back to Moshe, Aaron, and to all of the Am, and they immediately, את כל העדה, ויראום את פרי הארץ. They immediately, as you said, like start with showing them things. But maybe there needed to have been kind of like this private meeting first, and let's stop and think about it. And let's stop and think about what is it that we want to put out to the public, and what is it that we want to keep between us? To give thought to that piece of what do we want to project to the people right now? What do the people actually need from us right now? We know there's a reality. We know that it's going to be complicated, as you said, but we have to think carefully about that piece. But there's actually one other piece I want to just bring up from this conversation that they have, or the report that they bring back. We have this emphasis on the land itself, right? Like in so many spaces, the land becomes personified. It says this is Pasuk Lamedbet in the 13th chapter, the 32nd Pasuk, Vayotziu dibat haaretz asher taru ota et bnei Yisrael limor. Okay, that they spoke. Again, here it's saying like the bad speech or the bad reflection on the land, and it's called an eretz ochelet yoshveha, that it's a land that eats its inhabitants. The land of Israel, even before they've gone into it, is an identity in and of itself, right? It initially brings up this paradigm of there's a land, and then there's us people who are supposed to inhabit it. But the land almost has its own status, and the land has its own status in the sense that we're supposed to be careful not to say, negative things about it. We're supposed to be careful. We need to be careful around this land. Now, this comes up in so many places. It's a land that also can throw out people who don't behave properly in it. But I think that this is maybe I'm wrong. I think it's really one of the first places where we have this real personification of the land of Israel in a way that lets the people know that it's something that's way bigger than whatever they're actually capable of. And I think that that's also part of what they're unable to process right now. Meaning, this isn't just about, are you strong? Can you fight a war? Meaning, yes, that's true. But you're about to go into some place that is so different and exists on a different plane than anything else. You're not just moving from Egypt to Israel. It's not a far journey, as you said. It's very close. But you're going to be going to a place that is so much larger than life. And what's crazy about this, Rabbanit Rachelle, is that we really see this still in the world today, right? It's weird. It's weird how much attention this place.
It's obsessive.
It's obsessive. It's really odd. Now, of course, many people exist in the world and know nothing about wars in Israel, and they're not what they're thinking about. But considering how much of the Western world is with their eyes on this space, okay, it's because of anti-Semitism. There's all these different roots to it. It's something very, very odd, and it's weird. It's moving. It's I don't really understand it, right? The correlation between this space that seems to have its own personality and the fact that we still see echoes of that today.
First of all, yes, it's people had heard. It's hardly anybody that doesn't know about Israel, but they think they're the size of Australia and the power of I don't know, but. If there's something that I hear echoes of the anxiety of the Meraglim within me is living up to the standards of the country, and the fact that it's a country with a conscience, and that you chas v'chalila could be not worthy of remaining in the country, and nothing's done. There's no point where you say, "Oh, we're here for good," and nothing. No, we really have to continue deserving, and that's very scary. I think if we spoke before about qualities of leadership, it's not only the ein tova, the good eye that they should have been looking at the country, at the land, but a leader needs to have ein tova on his people. And as scary as it is to live out this experience of we could be worthy, we're challenged, but we could be good enough. We could grow out of this grasshopper stage. We're deserving in a deep sense, and we just have to play it out. Mm-hmm. These are an amazing people. In general, this has been maybe a personal experience of mine. At some point, it's 11 years tomorrow. I was filled with so much gratitude for the support I received from Am Yisrael when our children were kidnapped. And this sense of responsibility that I was making choices of being more involved and more into activism, whatever. And I found that there's an internal conflict between you're walking around and saying, "Wow, these are such amazing people. This is such an amazing society," and it actually, it pushes you. It gives you energy, and it also gives you this sense of responsibility to give back, and the critical eye that one needs in order to actually correct things and pull people higher and be a small part of greater solutions. And the critical part of your personality and this, Pollyanna side of seeing how wonderful these people are. They're almost two personality types. And they don't always live together within the same person that well. And in a way, that's also the Meraglim conflict. You come with a problem, you see the problem, you see the everything that has to be dealt with, etc., etc. And you need to have this trust and to give people the belief that they can do it. And to me, it made me very appreciative of the critical people, because it wasn't my personal tendency and my experience, but we all have a role. Yeah. And sometimes it's different people bringing different voices, and we have to learn to work together. But it's interesting how in so many fields, we're speaking about the Meraglim and the national things and the land itself, but we experience this in so many levels. Sometimes it's in a very, very personal sense.
I think that ultimately to succeed, we really need both of those.
Absolutely.
And it may not be, as you said, in the same person, but we might have to put together different kinds of people. And I still think we need to think about where those things get spoken about and where they don't get spoken about.
For sure.
I think that there's a lot of people, leaders, we're not naming any names, it's not the point of our conversation today. I think there's a lot of people who, we have this crazy thing today where everything gets publicized, but everybody then has to think about this question. Everybody has to think about, not just the politician, but the regular person has to think, what is it? I think about it when I put out podcasts. I'm putting something out into the public sphere. What is it that I want to put out there? And it doesn't mean that it only is positive. Anybody who listens to this podcast, which has been going on for 4.5 years, knows that I'm only putting out positive things. But these are questions we have to ask ourselves. If everybody's now given a public bama, a public stage, then people have to really ask themselves that question. Like, what do you want to be putting out in those spaces? Rachelle, if you allow me, as a final question, I want to ask you something. You were and are somebody who I think there would be many people out there who would say they could think of as someone who pulled up the ruach of Am Yisrael into a positive space when it could have easily fallen somewhere negative. You might say that it was Am Yisrael themselves, but we'll leave it as that. I'm curious if you could share with us, maybe in the past almost 2 years, year and a half, someone for you, maybe it was an incident or a person that you felt had that ability to lift up, whether it was you or you think the Am.
First of all, I have to say, anything you felt from me was just a reflection of everything we were receiving. So it's like holding on a mirror to people and saying, look who you are. And over these 2 years, I hear this Reb Nachman Breslev talking about Lev Shavur v'atzvut eno oto davar klal, where he speaks about being brokenhearted and being depressed and feeling despair. Okay, and he says one is dear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it's a place that maybe really we should be in, and the other one it saps, drinks out all the energies of our life. And he says, really theoretically, this is very famous, excuse me for repeating it, but theoretically maybe we should all be in the brokenhearted place, totally vulnerable, totally internalizing in every moment the hardships and pain and suffering and losses. But Rav Nachman says, people like you, they can come from that to despair. So I suggest, he says, be an hour a day, and this is metaphorical, give an allowance for being truly brokenhearted. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the time, and this almost sounds, like a profanity, like the rest of the time we should be besimcha, okay, enjoy. And how can you speak of joy? Did you see what's going on out there and where people are at and what, really, how could you? He says, no. Joy is the energies of life. It's what gives you the power to do what you think ought to be done and should be done, and it's what often revives other people. You can pass it on, and what I feel over this time that the greatest challenge for many of us, and we all learned our ways of doing it, is being the CEO of our resources, our mental resources, our time resources, our emotional resources, and giving ourselves the allowance to be belev shavur, truly brokenhearted, and to be besimcha, real joy. You know, it might not be the perfect happiness, but it's joy, because I've seen, again, over time, people making all kinds of choices, but as a society, I feel we're doing it. You know, we're to a large extent, it's the secret of our resilience, and again, with all this pain, there's so much blessing. And, you know, if we were the meraglim looking at the situation today, we could probably say a lot in both directions. But all in all, there's a lot to be grateful, and there's a lot to strive for.
I'll just end with this. I was at a wedding last night of a student, and I also taught her as a kala. And the first of all, the chatan who got married, he was part of a specific group of boys in Yeshivat Yerucham, where 5 were killed in the same shiur, and they were the mothers and there of the friends, and one of them specifically was his closest chavruta, and so there was all of that, and the yeshiva, and he also was from that town, so there was that sadness that was present. And on the side of the kala, who's from an amazing family, so they have had 3 really crazy losses within their family. She has a cousin who died of a disease a few years ago. She has another cousin. There are many siblings. Another cousin who was killed in the beginning, in the second month of the war, and a crazy thing. A very relatively young another relative of hers, the wife of one of the people of the family, who died of cancer a few months ago. And the thing that I noticed in what was going on, first of all, it was an amazing simcha. It was so powerful. First of all, they're very strong families, and there was an amazing atmosphere there. But I was observing specifically one family, which I really know them more, and I noticed, this is going to sound weird, but I noticed the spouses, you could see how deeply they love each other. Like I saw 2 spouses who, not long ago lost a child, and you saw how they were supporting each other, and you saw the holes that had been created, but you also saw a tremendous amount of love, and these are huge families with many children, and after I just was sort of like absorbing all of this, and I said to some students nearby, I said, I'm closing my eyes, and what I see, I said this in Hebrew, I said, I see a tremendous amount of loss that is surrounded and held up right now and supported by an unbelievable amount of love. And it was palpable, like it was mamash palpable in the crowd at that moment, specifically at the chuppah. There's something really powerful about chuppot in Israel. I think that I've let myself cry the most. I'm crying now. I let myself cry the most at chuppot.
Yes. No, if there's a moment worthy of crying, and it's the kind of tears that are both joy and pain often.
And everybody, and they're both mentioning them by name, but I promise you could feel it, mamash, like in the environment. Like I closed my eyes and I could feel those people, and I know some of them personally who they had lost from other directions, and it was exactly that. Like it's at those moments where I say, first of all, they're an amazing couple. They're just like a wonderful couple, both of them, so strong. They're going to do great things, and that sense of like the real strength of Am Yisrael is that there is no one we don't wish that upon anybody. We don't want anybody to have it, right? But that sense of there is a deep loss, but it's held up so deeply and so powerfully by all the love and the gratitude and the awareness of, literally, I saw one of the mothers, I saw her crying over her son. They mentioned him, whatever, and then like a minute and a half later, another one of their children came over, and I just saw them give her like the biggest hug, and you could see the holding both at the same time. Literally, literally I saw it in front of me, meaning the tears are coming down her face over the sadness of the loss of their child, and they're just embracing and giving so much love to their daughter at the same time.
You actually taught me now a new meaning to Hamekadesh Amo Yisrael al Yedei Chuppah v'Kiddushin. Sometimes the uniqueness and the power and the blessing goes exactly through those moments.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think we'll end there.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here today.
Tova Aretz Meod Meod.
Tova Aretz Meod Meod Mamash. And sometimes the cooperation and the joint journey between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes the journey take longer than we thought.
Definitely.
It definitely can take longer than we thought. But I think that along the way, and here I'm lifting a word from the commentary of the Shadal, along the way, it seems that we're supposed to discover our gvura. We're supposed to be discovering our strength and our backbone that sometimes we do. We discover and develop it through really hard times. And I guess I'll end with a bracha for Am Yisrael, that we're able to support it with a tremendous amount of ahava until we figure out how to get to the places that we need to go to.
Amen.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode from Matan Women's Institute for Torah Study. If you would like to sponsor an episode, please contact the Matan office or email me at podcast@matan.org.il. Please do us and all women's Torah learning a favor and share this episode with all of your friends and family.